Washington, D.C. is way off the chart, right? It's like $38,000 a kid, something crazy. But the higher ones, like New York and so on, they're maybe in the 25, 26, 27 kind of range, okay? But the national average is down around, I think it's 16, something like that. And at the low end of this list are the great states of Utah and Idaho. They're more like $11,000 a kid, right? So they're half of what we're spending. And their test scores are comparable, okay? They're getting a good deal, and why aren't we? Why can't we have that? And part of it is, we average 12 kids in a classroom or 11 kids in a classroom, and they average 22, that kind of, right? So, but another big one is administration. So I told you we were sixth highest. In administrative costs, we're second highest, okay? Only Vermont spends more on administration than we do. We spend $2,000 a kid on administrative costs. We spend more than, so first of all, we're higher than California on both counts, right? We're 10% more than California. We're more than Hawaii, we're more than New York, and administrative costs. Massachusetts, you name it, right? Only Vermont. So we need to do stuff about it. This is the problem. We've been spending, and one of my favorite graphs, by the way, it shows the top part of the graph is spending, and we're spending way over inflation over the last 10 years. This one.
It's on your table.
Oh, it's on your table, okay. And the bottom part of the graph is test scores. Going the other way. And I don't know, these tests, the way they do these tests make very little sense to me, because they have a test that's like, goes from 250 down to 243 or something, you know what I mean? I don't know how meaningful a 7-point swing is in a number like 250, but anyways, the point is we're spending like this and we're not getting any real results. So anyways, let me end. So what are we going to do about it? That's what we're going to talk about. Why are we having this problem, and what can we do about it? And there's some bills coming this year. We can talk about those. But maybe there's some kind of out-of-the-box thinking as well. So let me introduce the gentleman to my left, to your right, is Drew Cline. He's the chair of the State Board of Education. He's also the head of our pre-market think tank, the Hosea Bartlett Center. It's a fantastic thing, and I hope you go to their events.
All right, thanks, Andy. I have the correction that Charlie held up was not the one he was talking about. I jumped the gun, but it's even better. So this is one we made at the Bartlett Center. Most of you will have it on your table. And so back, I have a color one with a cheap blue color. So 2001 to 2024. This just illustrates the problem here. Our enrollment in New Hampshire fell by 26%, but our spending went up by 45%. Adjusted for inflation, it went up by 45%. That's $1.25 billion. That means that New Hampshire spent $1.25 billion more on public education in 2024 than it did in 2001, adjusted for inflation. So when everybody tells you that we're starving our public schools, or we're skimping, or we're not getting enough money, they're what in the technical jargon in policy world is called lying. And the important thing there is that spending went up while enrollment cratered. So we lost a quarter of our students, but we increased our spending by almost half. And those students, by the way, Dan's right, have lower test scores. So in all that time, our test scores went down on the National Assessment of Education Progress. So I put you guys some sheets, most of you have them, so you can kind of follow along with me, because I got some numbers. it'll be easier for you to remember. We went in 2001, New Hampshire went from being 4% below the national average in per pupil expenditures to being 20% above the national average in 2023. So that's how much we rocketed our spending. And that's state and local. It's all spending money. So if you want to try to get to the reason why, we did some research, we've done some studies on this stuff, and we've reached a couple of conclusions, and we can talk about them, and you can disagree with them. But my biggest takeaway from the research we've done over the last several years is that the biggest driver of increased costs is local voters in March. Republican towns, Democrat towns, doesn't matter. We try to find that correlation, right? The Democrat towns, the rich towns, does enrollment affect it? No. You can lose 10%, 20%, 25% of your students, and every spring voters will approve more spending. There's a massive disconnect between the data on enrollment, on effectiveness, on test scores, on costs, and all this stuff, and what voters want to do when they go to the ballot box. And they just like spending money on their kids. And that's the bottom line. And that's why, if you want to have, and I've seen examples perfect. If you want to say, and we've had other examples in other communities, if you want to cap spending, or just cap the rate of growth of spending on schools, you'll get a riot. You'll get told you hate kids, even if the spending has already gone up by 50%. Even if you're spending $25,000 a year per pupil, if you propose capping it at 26, people will say you hate kids. It's emotional. It's driven by people wanting to spend money on their own children. That's the number one driver. So, but where's the money going? So we looked at it in Barlow Center, and it's going not to teacher pay, which actually we've been advocating to increase teacher pay at the local level. I think that's appropriate. The problem is, it usually goes to hiring more staff. Now keep in mind the context here, as these numbers give you, the enrollment is going down. From 2001 to 2024, the number of students served in all New Hampshire public schools, this includes charter schools, fell by 21%, but the number of full-time equivalent administrators employed increased by 78%. And the number of all other staff increased by 15%. That's janitors. One of my most stunning numbers that we did in our first education report, from 2001 to 2019, we cut it off before the pandemic, so we could see what happened before that vested agreement. The number, this is raw number, of staff, new additional staff hired by K-12 public schools, district public schools in New Hampshire, we excluded charters too, just to make sure we were looking apples to apples. 3,359 new employees in K-12 district public schools during that time. All other state and local government combined hired 332 new staff. And we took out the universities from that because they kind of run themselves. They had 478 new staff. So K-12 public schools, as they were losing 26% of their students, hired 10 times as many employees as all other state and local government combined, if you take the university. If that doesn't tell you you have a staffing problem, I don't know what will. This is why, on average, about, I think it's 72% now, of your local property taxes go to schools. They're hiring and hiring and hiring and hiring. All this money, not all of it, a massive chunk of it goes to new staff. And so administration takes up the lion's share of that. But they're also, until the last few years, we've seen that change in the last few years, but they've been hiring more teachers too, or keeping their teaching staff the same as they've lost students. So you've got a situation that New Hampshire now has, and this is from the National Education Association's own numbers. I think our actual average teacher, class size is around 11 in New Hampshire. According to the NEA numbers, you you get at different levels, you get different numbers. But, I mean, that's by design. That doesn't happen by accident. So the number of students goes down, the unions make sure nobody gets fired, and you get holding on to a lot of staff that you might not need. You could have bigger class sizes, but our districts are choosing not to. So they're choosing to be inefficient. Benefits. Reason Foundation, if you guys saw our newsletter, we published this last week, did a really good study, and this is all using federal data, nobody makes up the numbers. States have to report their data to the federal government. From 2002 to 2023, spending on New Hampshire public school employee benefits went up by 152%. So, I mean, when your administration staffing is going up by almost 80%, and your benefits are going up by 150%, you can see what's eating up your tax money. So what didn't cause the increase? And I think this is really important. Inflation didn't cause it. Now, inflation was pretty bad in the last few years. But we can look at the cost of living going up 17%. Total expenditures per student going up 32%. So, you know, we're doubling the rate of inflation on our school spending. Federal spending didn't cause it. You hear us a lot about COVID. Well, you know, these district numbers going, it's all federal money, you know. No, it's mostly your own money. The federal revenues per New Hampshire student more than doubled between 2020 and 2024. From 965 per student to 2,179 per student. That's a 126% increase. Yet that accounts for only 19% of the $6,400 increase in total expenditures during that time period. So federal money didn't drive this. You'll also hear that it's, well, we have so many more kids with special needs. Like it's the special need. We need all these staff, we need the administrators to handle the special needs kids. And that's not the answer here. Now, there are increased costs with special needs kids, and that's mostly been driven by the increase in the number of kids who are coded as special needs, not that they actually have. Now, you do get, it's a legit thing, you get kids with serious special needs that might run up $100,000 in expenses. These are really severely disabled kids. That's not the bulk of people who are labeled special needs. During COVID, what happened, right? We went remote, all of a sudden everybody fell behind in everything. Math, science, reading. If you're behind the grade level in math or reading, you can go get an individualized education plan to help you get up to grade level. Then you're counted as special needs. So you might not need a specialist at all. You just need a little extra help on the side, catching up on reading. But you get extra money from the state for that. So, just to give you some numbers, the percentage of students eligible for free or reduced lunch fell by 0.9% from 2020 to 24. So it's not poor kids, we actually have fewer poor kids. The percentage of students with an IEP rose by 1.7% since 2020. And it's not that much. So that's not driving us. By the way, it's 3.35% nationally. So we have a much lower increase in special needs kids in New Hampshire. From 2001 to 2018, before COVID, the total number of New Hampshire students with an IEP actually fell by 147 students. So they will try to tell you that we need all these administrators, we need these specialists, we need all these people to do this big increase in special needs kids. No, that's not what's driving us. Sometimes they'll use the percentages to trick you. So the percentage of kids with special needs went up from 14.4% to 16.8%. When you're losing 54,000 students, you're going to lose a certain number of special needs students too, but your percentage of those special needs students will go up, even though your number went down. So they use the percentages to try to say, oh, we have all this, we have a higher percentage of special needs students. That's not right. So, did you get this? I'll go back to this chart. So that's kind of my boilerplate of the major factors that are driving these costs. So, you know, you can get into a lot more complex detail about this kind But I think sort of the big takeaway is, as we've seen enrollment decline, we've seen districts strive to do their very best to not let any employees go, to hire more employees, to make sure those, for some reason, it's the district administration, more even so than the school level administration, where a lot of these new hires are happening. They are trying to basically hold the school as an institution harmless from the effects of the enrollment decline. And so they are purposely trying to keep their budgets large and not cut and not shrink and not let staff go. And
Not transparent.
the voters are all too happy to help because they emotionally want to spend money on their kids and they don't know the numbers. So this is a really serious problem. We've tried to have some legislation addressed. When you go into that voting booth, you at best see this year's total spend and last year's total spend. And that's all you get. You should be able to see, not just on your ballot, but throughout the year on every school website, as they have these numbers. They're hidden in the school district budgets. They're hidden in the annual reports. If parents and voters could see on the website of the school, not the school district website, but on their school website, because nobody goes to the district website, the 10-year look back of spending, enrollment, maybe proficiency scores on state tests, maybe number of staff, maybe classroom size. You put a bunch of data points up there, and you don't have to editorialize, you don't have to say one way or the other, just put the numbers up there. And that way voters will know when they go into that booth, well, we're spending 20 million more than we did 10 years ago on 1,000 fewer students. Why are we doing it? And maybe they want that. I suspect there are actually a lot of districts who say, yeah, that's fine. I mean, you really will. I mean, this town that we're in right now probably would say that. But at least they'll know what they're spending, where the money's going, how the districts are using it, and whether it's getting the results. I think it's important to put those assessment scores on there. That would be my